Now, my friend, will talk about cyber frauds. To understand the concept of cyber frauds, we again divide this topic into smaller sections. First, we'll see what is fraud. Then, we'll talk about what is cyber fraud. And then, we'll talk about types of cyber frauds. After that, we'll talk about cyber attacks. And then, techniques to commit cyber frauds. And then, we'll talk about the impact of cyber frauds on enterprises. These are different small sections of this topic on cyber frauds. So first of all, let us understand what is fraud or how is the fraud defined. The definition of fraud we'll take up is from SA's statement on auditing 240, which says this essay in fact is for auditors' responsibility to to consider fraud and error, and this defines fraud as intentional misrepresentation of financial information by one or more individuals among employees, management, or those charged with governance or third parties. The concept is intentional misrepresentation. Although this essay talks about financial information specifically, but the concept can be used for all types of information: financial, non-financial, operational, etc. So when you intentionally misrepresent, the misrepresentation can be done inadvertently also, that is an error. But if it is done intentionally with a specific thought in mind that you have to do this, then that intentional misrepresentation of information amongst employees, management, etc. is fraud. That is, you are supposed to give some information to the management, to the employees, and you make modifications or changes or misrepresent it. That is the broad definition of fraud. So fraud is misrepresentation of information, and this definition can be extended, then extended to misrepresentation or manipulation or doing certain illegal activities. Those all come under the definition of fraud. But this is the basic definition, and then this is extended and applies to different types of activities which are done to cause, which are done to manipulate or misrepresent the information. That is referred to as fraud. Here we are restricting ourselves to fraud to the limit of information. You would be wondering that fraud is a wide term. Yes, it is a wide term, but here we are will be more or less concerned with fraud in terms of information, because we're talking of information systems protection, so we'll restrict ourselves more to around information only. From fraud we move on to cyber fraud. Cyber fraud means fraud committed by use of technology. That is, when you use computers, that fraud is referred to as cyber fraud. Cyber fraud refers to any deliberate deception for unfair or unlawful gain that occurs online. The most common fraud is online credit card theft. Other common forms may be monetary cyber frauds, for example, a non-delivery of paid products purchased through online auction, etc. So these are frauds which can be related to some technology. Earlier, somebody had to do a fraud. For instance, there is a money in a particular company, and somebody had to do a fraud. That person could manipulate the books of accounts and pass some fraudulent entries. For example, simplest example is a cashier passing fraudulent entries. He says payments have been made to the creditors, whereas no payments were made, and he takes away cash and goes to his place and passes a fraudulent entry, payment given to creditor. That's a simple example of a financial fraud. But now he does the same thing in information systems. In the accounting, entries are passed in the information systems in such a way that payments have not been made to creditors, and he instead says that cash has been given, whereas he has taken away that cash and passed fraudulent entries in the computers. So that's an example of a cyber or a computer based fraud. And cyber is mostly when we relate it to internet, that becomes a cyber fraud. So we are learning on a step-by-step basis. First, what is broadly fraud, and then we see what is fraud around with the help of information systems. And then cyber is mostly when internet is used to commit a fraud. That is broadly referred to as a cyber fraud. So the good examples: credit card theft. Lot of people steal away your credit card information. For example, you have purchased an item from the internet and you have entered your credit card information. People might steal that information. Another example could be you have purchased a product online and after receiving the payment the person doesn't send that information to you. Another example of cyber fraud. So when you are using technology, mostly internet technology, then it can be referred to as a cyber fraud. With the advancement in the technology, cyber frauds are increasing day by day across the world. One of the major reasons, in fact, some of the reasons behind rise of frauds are failure of internal control systems, failure of organizations to update themselves to new risks, and then smart fraudsters. Fraudsters are people who are able to target weaknesses in systems and the lacunae in internal controls even before organization knows that these gaps are there. These fraudsters, they know they can exploit these different things. So there are different reasons which can lay foundation for, or which can give options to people to commit frauds. For example, failure of internal control system, as we discussed, controls are not good enough, people can commit frauds. Failure of organizations to update themselves to new risk. Different risks are coming, but organizations are unaware. They have a website maintained. All their payments are coming through the website, online portals, for example, and they are unaware of the risks. That is a problem. You are a hotel, have a website in place, and a lot of bookings are done through that website. A lot of credit card information is entered by people. Now, can that information not be stolen away by someone unless you have securely protected it? It can be. And who will do that? Fraudsters. Fraudsters have become so intelligent. They can steal away information sitting on their homes. They don't have to come to your systems even. You can go to a website and smartly take away a lot of information. So that is a cyber fraud. Then we talk about types of cyber frauds. There are broadly two types of cyber frauds. Pure cyber frauds. These frauds exist only in the cyber or the internet world. They are born out of the use of technology. Example, website hacking. Pure cyber frauds, purely driven by internet, purely driven by the use of internet and simply coming out of that. Website hacking, so common these days. In fact, the government of India keeps on at times saying that a lot of its sites are attacked or hacked by people from countries with whom we do not have great relations. So many organizations are prone to attacks from outside the country also. All these are cyber attacks. Websites are hacked. Your critical information, for example, let's say there's a critical ministry or which has critical information about any, say about defense or country's other critical information, and that information can be stolen away or misused or damaged by somebody, or the site itself can be totally hacked and taken control of. So that is pure cyber fraud. And there are cyber enabled frauds, some other frauds. For example, these frauds can be committed in physical world also, but with the use of technology. The size, scale and location of these frauds changes. For example, withdrawal of money from bank account by stealing PIN numbers. Another example of a cyber enabled fraud. This is not purely driven by technology, but this is supported by technology a lot. So this is a cyber driven fraud. It is cyber enabled fraud. You are not directly attacking, you are not directly taking away cash, but you are stealing away PIN number, and that PIN number is used to withdraw money from a bank account. So that is indirect way of causing damage. The direct way was straight away hitting the website, for example, pure cyber frauds. And the indirect ways, using technology, using internet to take out some information and then trying to cause damage. So that is another type of cyber fraud. Another term which is used these days so often is cyber attacks, and we'll study about a few cyber attacks which are done. There are 5 or 6 categories of cyber attacks which we'll study about: phishing, network scanning, virus or malicious code, spam, website compromise, and others. These are examples of cyber attacks or cyber frauds, and we can call them. It's the same thing for that matter. These are some of the examples of cyber frauds which are more prominently known as cyber attacks. So let's take them one by one. We'll talk about phishing, we'll talk about network scanning, we'll talk about virus, spam, website compromise, and some others. Phishing, one of the most common cyber attacks which is happening these days. It is the act of attempting to acquire information such as usernames, passwords, and credit card details by masquerading as a trustworthy entity in an electronic communication. Communications purporting to be from popular social websites, auction sites, online payment processors, or IT administrators are commonly used to lure the unsuspecting public. Which means phishing. The term phishing comes from the traditional method of phishing which we do. You have a phishing is taking, you have a net and you try to pull out fishes. You search for fishes, if you find it, you pull it out. Similarly, these perpetrators, these hackers try to fish for information from you. So you might receive an email or information will be sought from you, and you will provide that information, and then you'll get to know that in fact this was a fraudulent person who asked for information from you. That information was wrongly given by you. Somebody might ask you by some means or some deceptive method, he will ask you about your bank usernames or passwords or credit card details, and you may simply pass on that information thinking that this person is a genuine person, but that person would not be a genuine person, he could be a hacker. So it could be, or you could be asked for information from say a popular website. You get a mail from say a mail from Facebook which says that we are updating our database, can you provide this information to us? And that email could be a fraudulent email. Now, so these days so many updates keep on coming that why we don't ask for any such information. So if you provide this information, and all this information can be used by fraudulent people. Now you must be wondering or thinking that this is a good concept, but can we have more examples of the same? You would be wondering, I have not heard or seen of phishing much, so how can I practically relate to it? In fact, there have been several good examples of phishing in the past. A couple of years back, there was a mail which was circulated so often. It used to say your income tax refund has been processed, and go to this particular link and enter the bank details. So, and when you used to click to that link, a screen opened in front of you that was very similar to the income tax website, and not many people could make out the difference. A lot of people simply entered their bank information, and instead of getting any refunds, they lost whatever money was lying there in the banks. They even shared their passwords. So after that, the havoc created by this particular phishing attack was so much that income tax website for several months displayed a notice in bold and italics, red color highlighted, that income tax does not send any emails asking for information. Income tax will never send an information for your bank details. If you have to claim a refund, it has to be mentioned in the income tax form itself. No mail is sent for bank information to you. So for a lot of time they send that particular information used to scroll on the website, and even if you check the website, it's still that message would be displayed somewhere in the site that income tax does not send any mails. And then banks, there was a prominent bank which suffered this menace so much. People used to, for example, you search on the Google for or any search engine for a particular bank, and you click a wrong option and a screen opens in front of you which asks for a username and password. And what you do that is you enter your username and password thinking it to be a genuine site, but it is a fraudulent site. It is just a web page that has been created for entering information. After you enter user ID password, there is nothing inside, but your password and user ID has been captured. So that is a phishing attack. So this is one of the most common cyber frauds or cyber attacks which happen these days. Second type of cyber fraud or attack is the virus or malicious code. Now we have already studied a lot about virus and malicious codes in logical access problems. Here we will take up the definition of virus as given in the IT Act. So we have already studied about virus a lot. We have studied about Trojans, worms, etc. Here a definition of the computer virus has been given. As per section 43 of the IT Act, computer virus means any computer instruction, information, data or program that destroys, damages, degrades or adversely affects the performance of a computer resource or attaches itself to another resource and operates when a program, data or instruction is executed or some other event takes place. So it is a first of all it is an instruction, it is information, data or program that can damage, it can destroy, it can degrade, it can affect what? A computer system, or it can attach to another computer resource and operate when a program, data or instruction is executed, and this can cause a lot of damage. And we have studied about all such things in the logical access issues and exposures. That is a virus. Very common type of cyber attack. You send a virus to a company's information systems, those systems could be damaged. You send it through internet, you send it through pen drive, you can pass on information, you can pass on such viruses to a company systems and it is damaged. Then network scanning, that is scanning the network. It is a process to identify active hosts of a system for the purpose of getting information about IP addresses. Active host, you scan a network to see from wherein you can enter into the systems. Again, we have studied as part of logical access paths that there are a lot of paths to get into a communication network. Through any node or any system in the entire network, you can get into the system. So you are trying to scan for any active or open hosts. Once you get an entry, you know you can access the entire system. So you scan the network. You try to find out if any port or any source is there which is open and I can make an entry into the systems. That is another common option. Then spam. The spam is something you and me are so common with these days. Spam mail, junk mail, as we say, we keep on getting so much. Emailing the same message to everyone on one or more mailing list is termed as spam. Spam is now these days our emails have got spam filters. When they know that this message has been sent to 5,000 people, they themselves put that information into a spam folder. So this concept of spam has been used so commonly and everybody is aware of these days. So very common form of a cyber attack. Then website compromise or malware propagation, website damage, website defacement. I am a company which is again the example of a hotel which is taking so much, or a travel portal, or an online company, or an e-commerce portal which is doing so much of business on the internet. In fact, 100% of my business is through sales on the internet. I don't sell anything else through physical sales, or 60 to 70% of my business is through internet. And what happens if somebody defaces my website? Somebody destroys my website. I cannot take bookings. Till the time I restore, my business is gone. I am totally depending on the online business, and till the time website is not working, my work is damaged. So will not a competitor try to cause such damage to me? Yes, it will. So again, a very common method of a cyber attack, that is website compromise. Then there are a few other methods also. Cracking crackers are hackers with malicious intentions. We have studied a little bit of this again in the logical access controls, that hackers are people who try to gain access to a system purely for the fun or purely for the sake of testing how much knowledge they have got. But when these people have malicious intentions, they are referred to as crackers. You know, you want to test your technological excellence, and you know, I can go right inside the website of a bank. I am a hacker, but with no mal intentions. I'm simply here to see what skills I have got. I go there, I come back, I'm fine. But then if I go there and I see, okay, now since I've got so much of knowledge, why not steal a couple of $1 million from the bank? Now since I've got so much knowledge, why not steal some amount from the bank? Now I'm a cracker. Crackers are hackers with malicious intentions. Eavesdropping. It refers to listening of private voice or data transmissions offered using a wiretap. We have touched upon eavesdropping. As part of the asynchronous attacks, we talked about wiretapping. That is the same thing. Eavesdropping is done through wiretapping. Email forgery. Sending email messages that look as if someone else sent it is termed as email forgery. Then email threats. Sending a threatening message to try and get recipient to do something that he would make it possible to defraud him is termed as email threat. You send a message, you scare a person, and you force him to do something unlawful, something which can be beneficial to you. And then scavenging. Scavenging, this is gaining access to information by searching computer records. Scavengers, who are scavengers? The vultures, eagles, those are referred to as scavengers. They search for food. Similarly, people who search for information inside computers. In fact, there is a similar term called dumpster diving. A lot of people even look for information even inside dustbins to find out if something useful can be taken out. Is it possible? Somebody got a credit card information, he tore it away and threw it in the trash bin, and somebody else comes and takes that information and joins the paper back. Can he not use that information? He can. And a lot of people look for such information. In fact, that is why if you see the bank statement and credit card statements, they don't have in the entire credit card number or bank account number on the printed on the statement, because they know, although they are sending to the recipient, but the recipient could be careless and he could throw away this information and somebody else can pick it up. So banks themselves are cautious. They are not sending such information which can be used by anybody to do any damage. So these are the different types of cyber attacks or cyber frauds which are so common these days. Phishing attack is so common, network scanning is so common, viruses are being sent, spams are being sent, website compromise is being done, then scavenging is being done, and then cracking, eavesdropping, etc. have been done, which have been covered under the others category. So these are some of the common cyber frauds or attacks which are taking place. Then we will talk about certain techniques to commit these cyber frauds or cyber attacks. There are around 14 to 15 points which have been given as techniques to commit cyber frauds or cyber attacks. And out of these points, my friend, you have covered a lot of points from these in logical access controls. Let's quickly run down the list of the techniques. Logic time bombs, round down, trapdoor, mass squandering or impersonation, data diddling, piggybacking, denial of service attack, leakage. Then we have password cracking, scavenging or dumpster diving, hacking, cracking, internet terrorism, social engineering techniques, and super zapping. Of these 15 terms we have already covered in those issues and exposures. Then why are we doing these things again? In fact, the intent of the author of the person who would have prepared the prescribed syllabus would be to explain about different. First of all, he's talked about different controls. and then he wants to talk about different cyber frauds and techniques which are used to do this. And there is a amount of duplication here. And for example, logic bombs, we have understood generally what are logic bombs, and now those have been covered again under the topic of cyber frauds. So there is some amount of duplication in this particular topic, and at times you would be getting a little confused as to how would you attempt the question. But that should not be a problem, because if, for example, you are asked on techniques to commit fraud, you know these are 14 or 15 points. But if there is a short note on a particular technique and or a weightage is different, you know what you have to write. So you do not get confused. Those were logical access issues and exposures. Most of them have been repeated here, because now we are talking of committing cyber frauds, that is frauds with the help of technology, which in fact is logical access issues and exposures only. Just that the heading is different, and based on the heading a little bit of points are up and down in these two questions. So I would want you to be very careful to know this comparison and to remember this comparison when question is being asked. So let us quickly see what all things are there. In fact, in this particular topic, techniques, these have been very briefly given. And in the topic on logical access issues and exposures, a lot of these terms were explained more in detail. In this topic, they are relatively briefly explained. Logic bombs. These are the programs that lie idle until some specified circumstances or a particular time triggers it. Circumstances or time. I take you back to logical access issues. A certain logic was attached, it was a logic bomb, and a certain time was attached, it was a time bomb. Similarly, we are saying specified time or circumstances trigger it. Once triggered, the bomb sabotages the system by destroying programs, data, or both. And that is what we studied there also. At a predetermined time or in the achievement of a predetermined circumstance or an event, the system causes some damage. That is a logic bomb. Round down. Did we not study about rounding down, my friend? We did. Round down, computer rounds down all the calculations of interest to 2 decimal places. Remaining fraction is placed in an amount which is controlled by the perpetrator. That is what we understood there also. We transfer an amount of money from your account to some other bank accounts, and that account is controlled by a perpetrator. Then trap down or trapdoor. In this technique, perpetrator enters a system using a backdoor that bypasses normal system controls, and fraud is committed. That is what we talked about in the logical access controls also. In fact, there we considered an example of a person with a programming knowledge who doesn't use his own password but goes in through the login ID and password of a user to commit some fraud. So that was a trapdoor. Then we talk of squandering or impersonation. A perpetrator gains access to the system by pretending to be an authorized user. Now again, can you just think of it, what concept we studied about, what was a similar concept in the logical access issues which we studied? There we called it as spoofing. Although we specified on IP spoofing there, and here we are simply talking about general spoofing, that is pretending to be an authorized user. And here we are calling it as impersonation, the same thing. Then data diddling, again we studied as part of asynchronous attacks. Changing data before or after, during or after it is entered into the system in order to delete or add the system data is referred to as data diddling. We studied this also. Piggybacking. Piggybacking refers to tapping into a communication line and latching onto a legitimate user before the user logs into the system. So when the user is logging into the system, you attach and you also enter into the system. Piggybacking, carrying on somebody's back. We studied this also in logical access issues and exposures. Then denial of service attack. It refers to action or series of actions that prevents access to a software system by its authorized users, causes the delay of its time critical operations, or prevents any part of system from functioning. Again, we can relate it to the denial of service attack, where we said that somebody can hit a site 1,000,000 times and cause the site to crash. It can be because a site can operate up to a certain level. It can take a load up to a certain level. After that, it will crash. We studied about this also. Leakage, it refers to unauthorized copying of company data such as computer files. So my friend, these 8 points, when you are going to remember these 8 points, don't remember in isolation. Try to relate it with the different types of technical exposures and asynchronous attacks which you have studied as part of logical access controls. And those 8 points here have been given a new name, techniques to commit cyber frauds. So those 8 points have been given a new name, techniques to commit cyber fraud. Along with that, there are a few other points also. Password cracking, simple thing. Intruder penetrates a system's defense, steals the file containing valid passwords, decrypts them and then uses to gain access. He wants to enter a system, why not take away the file directly? Why not store the file which has got all the passwords? And once you have got all the passwords and login IDs, then you can use this file to access a company's information system. So that is a simple or an easier way to commit fraud. Then we talk of scavenging or dumpster diving, just as we did. Again, refers to gaining access to information by searching computer records. Hacking, cracking, again we covered in the topic. Hacking refers to unauthorized access and use of systems, usually by means of computer and a telecommunication network. Normally, hackers do not intend to cause damage. Who intends to cause damage? Crackers. Crackers are hackers with malicious intentions, which means unauthorized entry. Now across the world, cracking or hacking is a general term which two nomenclature, it's a common term with two nomenclatures. One is ethical hacking, one is unethical hacking. And the unethical hacking is something we are calling it as cracking. So if you are doing hacking with lot of ethics in you and with no intention to cause damage, it is hacking. But when you are doing with the intention to cause damage, that is referred to as cracking. And then we have internet terrorism, so common, so much heard these days. It refers to an action or actions that prevent access to software system by users or causes any damage with the use of internet. Social engineering techniques. Perpetrator tricks an employee in giving out information needed to get into the system. Again, so common, you try to socially, you talk, you chat with him on a site, you meet him on a site and you try to get information out of the user. And lastly, the super zapping, that is unauthorized use of special system programs to bypass regular system controls. So there are 15 techniques to commit cyber frauds, and if we have to remember those 15 techniques, a lot of points are coming from some other concepts we have studied. So these are different techniques to commit cyber frauds. And the last part of this particular topic is impact on cyber frauds on enterprises. Now again, the impact is very similar. The question on impact of enterprise is very similar to the third part of logical access problems, that is computer crime exposures. The computer crime exposures, the same points which are repeated in computer crime exposures have been used as impact of cyber fraud on enterprises. There are 5 points: financial loss, legal repercussion, loss of credibility, disclosure of information and sabotage. And these 5 are exactly similar to the computer crime exposures which we studied as part of logical access controls. Thank you very much.